Our Bible reading this morning is taken from Mark chapter 4. Mark chapter 4, and we're reading from verse 35. And it's entitled, in my Bible, it's entitled, Jesus Calms the Storm. That day, when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Be calm, quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this?" Even the wind and the waves obey him. This is God's word, and we thank him for it. This morning, we're thinking about this simple story. It's often used as a children's Bible story, but I think there's some things that we can learn from this story this morning, that we can learn how God is there for us, no matter what happens. You know, most of you will know by now that I'm going to be moving house fairly soon. And I'm going to be moving from where we live now in Hangleton just into Southwick. And I got a phone call from my son. You don't mind me talking about this, do you? Because it's what's going on in my life, and it's what's taking up a lot of my time at the moment, so it's on my mind. But I got a phone call the other day from the solicitors, and he shocked me when he said we could be ready and you could be moving the first week in February. What? I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting him to say, well, it's still going to go on for a while. We've got this and that to sort out, and maybe it'll be sometime in March. And I said to Julie after that phone call, I said, we've got some work to do and we've got to do it pretty quick. But actually, we got a couple of weeks grace on that because things aren't going to move quite that quickly. But it was still a wake-up call. And we still had to think about packing and sorting everything out. And we were sorting everything out at home. And I'm saying to Julie, are we taking this with us? And are we throwing this away, or are we keeping it? And she said, there's nothing that is old or that's getting old and damaged or anything that's coming to our house. She said, we're not taking anything that's looking tatty and old or anything. And so I carried on, and then I started thinking, where am I going to go and live? And she still hasn't told me. But one of the things that we need to do is we need to get in an electrician. The place we're buying is in a bit of a mess. It's not had any work done to it for, since it was built, I think. But it needs an electrician in, and it needs rewiring, and it needs a builder in, and it needs new windows, and it needs walls knocked down and things like that. And it's got quite a bit of work to do. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is, how do we find good electricians? How do we find good builders that we can trust, builders that we can put our faith in, that they're going to do a good job and that they're going to do it when they say they'll do it, And when they at the price that they say they're going to do it for, it's difficult. It's difficult to know. But one of the things that we're doing is we're getting a number of quotes for most things, and we're looking for people to recommend to us people that will do it. And we've had a few recommendations, and we're going, we're looking that way. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the fact that most people today don't know a great deal about Jesus. And they don't know a great deal about who he is and what he does. The only way they can find out is if they get a good recommendation about him. Most people are looking for ways to live their life. They're looking for ways that they can get the excitement in life that they want, the joy, the trust, the firm foundation in life that they want. Most people are looking for that. Most people will listen to their friends when they say, oh, you need to put your bets on here, and you need to invest in here, and you need to do this, and you need to do that, and this is the way you go forward. You need to make sure you've got a good job and you're getting promotion and really work hard. You need to work hard at school so you can get a great job when you leave. You need to put your money in this bank or that bank, and there's lots of things that we get recommended for. There's lots of things people will tell us we need to do in terms of how we live our lives. We need to be telling people that Jesus is the way. He's the one that we can trust. He's the one that if we put our faith in him, he will never let us down. And that's a recommendation that we need to be giving to people. And that's a recommendation that I can give today. Because I can honestly, truthfully say that when I put my faith and trust in Jesus, he has never, ever let me down. There are times in my life where things have been really difficult. There are times when I've gone through some really tough challenges. There are things that have happened in my life that I still can't move on from in various ways, that still hurt and still cause me to look back and think, wow, why was all that? I know why. But I'm not going to go into the details, but it's sometimes really difficult but to move on and to move on. But I can truthfully tell you that when we bring Jesus into our situation, then no matter what we're going through, he is there helping. And that's exactly what happens here in this story. But before we get into this story, most people, if they're telling this story to children, or they concentrate on this storm, this storm that comes along. But this morning, I don't want to concentrate so much on this storm as I want to think about what Jesus said. And Jesus did three things. Three things here. There's three things that happened. Two that Jesus said and did, and one that his disciples said. Jesus, the first thing is, the disciples wake Jesus up. He's in the boat and this storm comes along. Now, I have sailed on the Sea of Galilee. I've been there, and it was great. And we got on this boat, and they said, this is the same size boat that Jesus would have sailed on. How they know, I don't know. But they said, this is about the size of the boat that Jesus would have been on. And so we went out, and it was a beautiful day, and there were no storms forecast or anything, so we were quite safe. But we went out on this boat, and it was great to be able to sail on the Sea of Galilee and think that this is where Jesus did this miracle. But this particular day, Jesus had been preaching all day. He'd been talking about various parables and teaching the people, and there was a great big crowd who had been gathering, and Jesus would have been tired, and so he wanted to get away from the crowd just to to have a break, have a rest. And he said, take us over to the other side of the lake. So they got in the boat, and as they were setting off, Jesus would have sat down in a corner of the boat we're told he had a cushion there, and Jesus went asleep. So from that point on, Jesus is not aware of what's going on. Or is he? Or is he? You see, I believe that Jesus knew everything that was happening. But as they were sailing, then this furious storm gets up. The wind gets up. I'm told that because the Sea of Galilee is so low, below sea level, and it's surrounded by mountains and hills, that what can happen is very suddenly, if the wind gets up a little bit, it funnels down through and across the Sea of Galilee, and it can very quickly turn from being nice and calm and peaceful. And this generally happens during the late evening, first part of the night. And this would have been when Jesus was sailing across. He's got his disciples with him who are good, strong sailors. They were fishermen. They were used to sailing on this lake. And so there shouldn't have been a problem. But this was a particularly bad storm, and we're told that the boat is getting swamped. The disciples are scared. The sailors in the boat are getting frightened. They don't know what's going to happen. They're thinking, this boat is going to be swamped completely. We're going to lose our lives. We're going to be thrown into the sea. The boat's going to go down, and we're going to be there in this storm. And they're panicking. They're thinking, what are we going to do? And then they remember that Jesus is there. They remember that Jesus is there, so they wake him up. They wake Jesus up and say, teacher. They said, wake up, teacher. Don't you care? Don't you care if we drown? What a thing to say to Jesus. Don't you care? Don't you care? Well, I believe that Jesus cares more than we could ever know. But Jesus gets up, and the first thing that he says is, quiet, be still. And the wind dies down, and it becomes completely calm. Jesus calms the storm. Jesus had control over the elements, over the wind, over that sea. Because Jesus created it all. He was with God when the world was created. Jesus has complete control over everything of nature and of this world. And he can say to that sea, be still. And he can say to that wind, quiet. And it did. And it will calm down. But then Jesus says to his disciples, he says, why are you so afraid? Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? We're told that the disciples were terrified. But the sea's calm. It's the wind's gone. Why are they terrified now? Why are they terrified? They say to each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. You see, the disciples are now terrified because of who Jesus has shown himself to be. They suddenly realize that Jesus isn't just a miracle worker who can heal people and tell good stories. They suddenly realize that Jesus is the Son of God, and even the wind and the waves obey him. That Jesus has got full power over everything. They suddenly realize that Jesus is a lot more than they thought he was. Jesus said to them, "Do you still have no faith?" Now, we're told in Hebrews 11 that faith, let me just turn to it. Faith is, Hebrews 11 chapter 1 says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Faith is, according to this, two things. It's being sure, having assurance of what we hope for, and confidence in what we do not see. What we can't see, but confident it's there. Faith is those two things. Faith is confidence and assurance. And this morning, I just want us to think that, what does that actually mean for us? What does it mean that faith means we've got confidence? What have we got confidence in? And what have we got assurance of? Well, I think the first thing that we are called to have faith in God. And we can have confidence in him because of all that we know he has done and all his promises that we know are true. We sang earlier, standing on the promises of Christ our King. And we can look to his promises for our lives. We can look and know that all that he says is true. When he says, I will never leave you or forsake you, we know that he means he will never leave us. When he says, cast all your problems, all your anxieties, all your cares, bring them to me, then we know that we can bring all of our problems, all of our anxieties, all of our problems, everything to him. We can bring it to him. And we can leave it with him because we can trust him because he will help us. He is in control of all things. So faith is having confidence that God will do what God said he will do. And assurance is that he will do it in the best way that he can, and he wants the best for us. Are you sure that God is on your side and doing the best that he can for you? Are you sure that God is everything that he can be, doing all that he can for you? You can be sure of it, I'm telling you. Because no matter what you're going through, no matter what happens in life, God will never, ever let us down. You know, sometimes, a bit like these disciples really, the first thing that they tried to do was to steer the boat. The first thing they tried to do was to save themselves. The first thing that they tried to do, and there's an element of panic in it, isn't there? There's an element of panic when they wake Jesus up and, Jesus, don't you care if we drown? They're panicking, they're worried, they're scared. And that's how most of us, when we start thinking that we can do things on our own ability, when we think that we can do things by ourselves, or we can do things with a little bit of help from others, when we try and do things the way the world tells us to do things, look to ourselves, look to others to help, put your trust in your bank, put your trust in your house, in the things of this world. When we start doing that, when we think we've got everything in, and when we think we've got our own strength in place and nothing can touch me, then that is faith that is misplaced. Because if we put our faith in the things of this world, it will let us down. But when we put our faith in the things of God, it will never let us down. And the other thing to notice is that when we put our faith in the things of this world, it starts, and our own ability, then when things go wrong, then we start to panic. It leads to panic. It leads to confusion. It leads to worry and concern. When the things of this world go wrong, when we're putting our faith in all the things that we're told in this world we can trust, when they start going wrong, then it leads to panic. We hear about panic on the stock markets. We're told that, when there's been, these big falls in the market, then the people that are investing in the market, the bankers and those people, many of them have committed suicide because they can't cope because of what's happened. They've lost everything. Everything they put their faith and their trust in has gone. And they see no future. But when we put our faith and our trust in God, then He will help us. He will lead us. He will guide us, and everything will be good. The third thing that I think happens with faith is that people lie about things. And if we put our faith in lies, people lie about who Jesus is. The disciples were terrified when they found out who Jesus really was, that he could control everything. It says they were terrified and they asked each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. When we realize who Jesus really is, that he is the Son of God, and that he came into this world because he loves us, because he cares for us so much that he was willing to give his life for us on that cross. When we realize all that Jesus gave up when he came into this world, when we realize that he was willing to leave the glory of heaven and die a death, a horrible death in this world. When we realize who Jesus really is and all that he has done for us and all that he continues doing for us. He says he's making a place for us in glory, a place for us in heaven. That's what Jesus is. A person that loves us, the Son of God who loves us so much that he was willing to give everything for us. Many people believe a lie about Jesus. They believe that they've got to work hard to become a Christian, that they've got to do things to be forgiven, that in order to get to God, they've got to live good lives, and they're not good enough to come. But God, in his grace and in his love, has given us everything that we need to come to him. That's the God. That's the God that we can come to. And this morning, the thing that I think we can learn most, or I've learned most from this story, is that when we really come and think about who Jesus is, then we can have that confidence and that assurance that he will be with us. No matter what storms, problems or troubles we go through, he will never let us down. We can have our total trust and faith in him. He will be with us.